What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer. With the first ever Overwatch Classic event now coming to a close, I wanted to take a moment to talk about this event as a whole, the impact it had with me personally as well as the community, what exactly we've learned from it, and what we can likely expect to see Blizzard doing in this same sort of avenue going forward into the future. Now to start, I think it's probably best to just talk about my own personal experience playing it, which for those of you who've been following my channel and keeping up with all my thoughts and takes on things, I wasn't the biggest fan. As much as I love that Blizzard brought back the original launch day of Overwatch with this new Overwatch Classic mode, I gotta admit, I didn't have fun playing it. Basically at all. There was a brief shred of nostalgic happiness to be gained through the handful of matches I actually invested into it, but it didn't take long for me to get very, very frustrated with Overwatch Classic. Most of my favorite heroes flat out didn't exist. Those who were in the mode were pretty terribly balanced, some being so egregiously so that they were effectively unplayable, and even those who were somewhat still viable just felt overall clunkier and less streamlined and less good to play, so to say. Now, that's obviously very specific to my niche of characters I actually enjoy. If you're someone who really loves playing Mei or Widowmaker or Tracer, I could easily see how you have a blast with this mode. Those heroes have been very strong in it. But for tank mains like myself, who also plays a good bit of support, yeah, not so much. And I think that does sort of lend to the overall impression I had from playing Overwatch Classic, which is that Overwatch 1, when it first launched all those years ago, was a pretty clunky game. So many aspects of the game were just stiff by modern standards. The overall gameplay flow of basically every single hero is just clunkier with worse balancing. Tanks didn't really have as established of a role in the actual role of being a tank. They were kind of just big DPS who didn't do as much damage and died very easily because of how big they were. While supports were a borderline non-existent role, having only 4 representatives and only 3 of those being able to heal, and only 1 of those being good at healing, basically. So I will say I certainly appreciate how far Overwatch has come in terms of refining the tank and especially support role since this initial launch day patch, and it was interesting getting to relive that moment once again. But for me personally, yeah, I didn't have much fun with this mode. I played it a few times that first week when there was no limits, had more than a few too many matches of 6 Widows versus 6 Widows, and then didn't touch it again until the very end of the event where I wanted to just get a few more matches in, especially now that they'd implemented the hero limits to only 1 per team, and just get a sort of different sense of how it played, and overall my thoughts are more or less the same. Overwatch Classic is a less balanced mode with fewer options for gameplay in terms of not only heroes, but also maps and modes available, with those that do exist being pretty clunkily implemented. And yet, despite that being my own experience with it, many people in the Overwatch community seem to have a pretty different take on it. Yes, it's probably no surprise to many of you watching this video that many people in the Overwatch community loved Overwatch Classic. Not only because it was a cool look at how Overwatch used to be, a literal nostalgic trip down memory lane, but also they just genuinely prefer this sort of playstyle, which is bizarre to me in a sense, but I can appreciate that people have different tastes. Over the 3-week runtime of the Overwatch Classic event, I've been following a lot of different people's takes and impressions on this mode. There are a lot of people like myself who played a few matches and were immediately done with it, but a lot of other people played a few matches expecting it to be just a fun little nostalgia trip, only to get hooked, playing it constantly for the entire duration of the event. Not only did it bring back old players, but also new players who just enjoyed this different take on what is Overwatch. Not everybody loves the fast-paced action of modern day Overwatch. Many people prefer the slower, more methodical way the game used to play. Back when there was less mobility, heroes were a lot slower, and the game was, in a lot of ways, kind of just simpler and more laid back. There are a lot of players who really enjoy this type of gameplay, even outside of it being a nostalgic experience. The fewer maps and heroes and mechanics made the overall gameplay simpler, and people like that. Not everybody likes the complexity of Overwatch in its current day and age, and so this classic mode that literally just recreated the original feel of Overwatch 1 on the day it launched managed to capture players in a way that, if I'm being honest, I don't think even Blizzard fully expected. And I gotta say, overall, while I personally wasn't a fan of the mode, it has gotten me thinking a lot about the future of Overwatch and modes such as Overwatch Classic, and how Blizzard could potentially find a pleasant little middle ground that caters to both player bases. This is something that I first really was thinking about not that long before Overwatch Classic was announced, specifically in the case of Fortnite, which, as many of you know, has just recently wrapped up its Fortnite Chapter 2 remix season and is getting back now to the modern era of Fortnite with Chapter 6. But in Chapter 6, there will also be an ongoing OG season, a return to the original very first chapter of Fortnite from way back in 2018, that'll be running concurrently with the modern Chapter 6. And in the case of Fortnite, I think that's a genius decision. Clearly, much like Overwatch, as I just talked about, Fortnite has the same division of players. People who like the current state of the game in its modern iteration, as well as people who like the OG simpler version. That's not to say one is better than the other, they're just two different preferences, two different player bases. And if the developers, being Epic Games or Blizzard, is able to, why not cater to both? Fortnite is clearly doing it right now by bringing back the OG chapters simultaneous to the new Chapter 6. So what if Overwatch did the same? Given how many people played Overwatch Classic during just the mere 3 weeks that it was in the game, is there potential for Blizzard to open this up to something far grander than just a periodic new 3-week event exploring a different meta or different era of the game, but rather, is there a way to make this permanent? Make this a separate mode, separate of the existing 5v5 Overwatch 2, that can run alongside modern Overwatch and keep players from both parties happy. I will always be playing modern Overwatch, probably. I cannot envision myself ever returning to an Overwatch Classic mode unless it's like some sort of weird hybrid where it takes a lot of modern Overwatch elements like the self-healing for all heroes and a lot of the newer hero additions and mechanics and implemented that into a classic mode. I don't know how Blizzard would do that or if they would even want to. But while that would be my personal interest, sticking with the modern game and the new directions it takes from there, there's a lot of people who will enjoy the old version enough clearly that I do think Blizzard should seriously consider having some sort of long-form ongoing OG or classic mode. Again, there's no telling what this is actually going to look like. I think a lot of people are hoping to sort of recapture that classic feel with the 6v6 tests that'll be in Season 14, but even then, I don't know that that'll necessarily satisfy people the same way Overwatch Classic has. And even so, if Blizzard does end up pushing forward through the timeline, so to say, moving on to the Mercy Moth meta or the Goats meta eras of Overwatch, how will that actually impact the people who've been enjoying Overwatch Classic? With each step closer to modern day, I feel like inevitably Blizzard is going to lose a lot of the people who are currently enticed by the idea of Overwatch Classic and its simplicity and the dumb, chaotic fun I've seen so many people describe it as, because that was just how the game evolved. It's not like overnight it went from Classic to Overwatch 2. No, there were several iterative steps along the way, each one changing the game in minor but ultimately significant ways that have molded it into the game it is today. Sure, you had big jumps like the jump from Overwatch 1 to 2, but even then, the final days of Overwatch 1 were a lot closer to modern Overwatch 2 than they were to the true launch day classic of Overwatch 1. And so, going forward, what exactly will Blizzard do with this Overwatch Classic model? When they first launched Overwatch Classic, they said that whether or not there would be further Classic tests would hinge entirely on how popular Overwatch Classic this time was, and, well, if this wasn't popular enough of a mode for them to do more later down the line, then I don't know what they're looking for. But I think it is safe to say for us at this point that there will be more Overwatch Classic going forward. As for how exactly they go about implementing it, whether it's more of an event type thing again, like what the original Overwatch Classic just was, or if they turn it into a more permanent type structure of the game itself, we have yet to see. But I am certain, without a doubt, Overwatch Classic will be a thing we see returning in the future in some form or another, and even though I don't personally enjoy it, I'm excited to see it happen because I know there are a ton of people who love this mode, and if you have more people invested in the game of Overwatch, even in different modes that I never touch with a 10-foot pole, it's still good for the game because overall, you get people invested in it, you get players driven to the game, and if you want to look at it from the business side of things, that all equates to money for Blizzard, which at the end of the day helps them to keep making the Overwatch I love, which is modern day Overwatch 2. People always like to complain about Overwatch 2, and Lord knows I've complained about it enough on my own, but overall, the one thing Overwatch Classic has made me realize for sure at this point in time is I'm thankful for modern Overwatch 2. As much as there is to hate about it, there's also so much to love. The new heroes, the streamlined abilities and mechanics, all the extra quality of life features that have just made the game feel more complete and cohesive and fluid are all things which I think on a daily basis, I at least tend to kind of take for granted and only really get to appreciate when I see something like Overwatch Classic. And so on that note, I would love to hear your thoughts, everybody, in the comments down below. What have your thoughts been on Overwatch Classic? Did you play the mode a lot? Is this something you had a lot of fun with? Or maybe you're like me and only touched it a few times and basically had enough of it from that. Do you have any thoughts or expectations as for what Blizzard's going to do with the mode going forward? Do you think Overwatch Classic could at some point become a permanent part of Overwatch 2? Let me know in the comments down below, and as always, be sure to subscribe, hit up that bell icon, follow me on X, and join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any of my future Overwatch 2 news streams and other content. And special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible. If you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.